Are you still awake? These are the stories that keep us from a peaceful slumber. So curl up and pull the covers a little tighter, because in this episode, we're checking into a world famous celebrity hotel that's also notoriously haunted. Hello, and welcome to the Chateau Marmont. Located on Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood, the chateau was built in the early 1900s, but it is still thriving to this day and still very popular with celebrities. One of the reasons I wanted to start off with the Chateau Marmont is because it has a little bit of both. It has a little bit of the history that I like, right? I want to combine urban legends, historical hauntings with real life history. And the chateau is still up and running. It's very vibrant. There's stuff going on all the time, and you'll definitely still see celebrities there and stuff like that. So I feel as though many times when we talk about hauntings and urban legends and things like that, it's, oh, it was 100 years ago. It's always something really old, and it's not something that's like still existing today. Like psychologically, old stuff is accumulated history. It's decaying, right? You go into an old building and you expect it to be kind of creepy because the paint is peeling off the walls and the stairs creak when you walk up them. The pipes make those low humming noises, which actually, by the way, physically, those really low hertz frequencies not only create an effect in our minds, but the vibrations create an effect through our bodies as well that can be unnerving. So that's a psychological reason why time sort of equals lore. But I hear what you're saying. Old stuff is boring. I don't want to learn anything. So, mhm, okay, let's talk about a haunting from the 2000s. In 2004, photographer Helmut Newton was exiting the driveway and suffered a sudden, severe heart attack. It caused him to lose control of his vehicle. It ended up, I think, actually hitting a pedestrian, maybe just grazing them. Well, I don't know. Are they okay? Footnote, asterisk, we don't know. But it caused the accident for him to accelerate. Obviously, the car went out of control and crashed head on into a retaining wall across the street. This was, what, 22 years ago? Oh, I'm so good at math. New, old-ish, right? I don't know, whatever. To me, the 2004 of like the yesterday, what happened? How was that 22 years ago? What? But currently, guess who still stay at the chateau claim that his spirit still haunts the property. And this one's kind of sad because they say that it is a figure of a wandering, dazed, and confused man walking around near the lower driveway and the garden grounds right near the site of the crash. Now, if you've been to Hollywood and you know this area, could that be someone drunk from the strip club wandering down the streets at night? Sure. Let's add a little reality here, right? But how is it that people have had these sightings and only later looked it up and found out what had happened in 2004? They didn't go there with the expectation of seeing a fucking ghost, but they saw someone wandering the grounds and then discovered the story behind what they saw. It's sad. No, sad. He was 83. He had a good life. He was actually a world-renowned photographer, so I would say he had a pretty good life. That leads us to actually an even more tragic case, and possibly the most famous haunting at the chateau. I think I just like saying Chateau. Chateau. All right, this one takes us all the way back to 1982. I hope you're drinking along. This is my Jack in the Box Monster Box cup that I got last Halloween when I went through. I was like, Monster Box? What? A cup that changes color? What? It has skulls on it. It's mine. It's mine now. So if you're only listening to the audio portion of this podcast, you're missing out on a lot. You could watch me drinking out of a glass that changes color. Anyway, picture it. The year is 1982. One of the biggest stars in the comedy world is John Belushi. If you don't know who I'm talking about, pause, Google it. We're back. John Belushi had a sort of tragic rise and fall. And in Hollywood, unfortunately, it's a tale as old as time. Someone who is a talented, creative individual becomes famous for their talent. They're thrust into the national and world spotlight. People walking down the street know who they are, and their life takes a turn. They begin to self-medicate. Maybe they have addiction issues, and that was the case with Belushi, who had an overdose at the Chateau in Bungalow 3 in 1982. So guests in Bungalow 3 often, I would say the opposite of our first case. In the second case, Bungalow 3 is pretty famous for this. So people do report a lot of stuff going on in the bungalow, whether he's sitting in a chair or they just have weird vibes and feelings, something that kind of feels in the air or tangible or a very cold, cold, cold spot. But here's one that I found really interesting when I was doing some digging into people's stories from the chateau. Chateau. I just like saying that. So I thought this is actually fucking creepy. It is often reported that guests see his reflection staring back at them in the bathroom mirror. Y'all, I would be checking out. I would be no, no. How about Bungalow 4? Mm-mm, mm-mm. No, mm-mm. I need to do my hair. I don't need no. Mm-mm, mm-mm, mm-mm. Absolutely not. Well, here's a good story about the Belushi sightings in Bungalow 3. And as much as you could say people go into the bungalow expecting to see something and therefore they see something, what about a child? A young boy staying in the bungalow was found laughing by himself when his parents asked what he was laughing at. He said he was talking to a funny man who matched Belushi's description. Do you think children are closer to the veil? That is to say, a couple of issues here, right? One, kids don't have a lifetime of people saying, like, oh, ghosts aren't real, or you didn't see that, or that's not true. Kids are more open to possibilities, maybe. Also, they're much younger. Where are we before we're born? Or is it depending on your religious beliefs, of course, and all this stuff, but where are we? Are we in that ether? Are we beyond that veil? And then now we're on the other side of it. And so when you're younger, you're closer to that veil. Mm. Mm. I do know, having firsthand experience with this, not myself, but other like relatives of mine, when they would have kids that were close in age, when they would have like a toddler and then they maybe have a baby. And the baby would be kind of goo goo gaga-ing and whatever. And to the parents, it was just like, whatever. And the toddler would be like, no, she's saying blah, blah, blah. She needs this. They're like, well, how are you talking? How do you understand what the baby is saying? She's just babbling. but not to the toddler. They understand that language. So maybe kids are just more naturally attuned to those things. Maybe kids are just creepy. What's my vote? Ugh, children. Look, I'm sorry, y'all. Kids are weird. They're weird. They're weird. But if a child told me they were talking to a ghost, I wouldn't be like, that's not true to me. I would be like, interesting. What is the ghost saying to you? What does the ghost look like? I would definitely be curious. I would ask follow-up questions. There's more. Other famous hotel spirits. Guests in room 79 often report a man floating above their beds, staring down at them. Now that's a perv right there. That's a That's probably not even a ghost. Someone just glued themselves to the ceiling. They won't notice. Y'all pervs. How about this? And this one's really amplified through any number of horror movies, TV shows, etc. The Watcher in the Window. Passersby on Sunset Boulevard often report seeing a shadowy figure pacing the balcony of room 79 when that room is completely empty. Speaking of empty rooms, how do you explain the loud music, laughter, and footsteps that come from vacant rooms, especially after midnight? Who's that? Why do you hear that? Why would you pause here? Because, curiously, so there's a thing called, so we all know what clairvoyant is, right? You can see stuff. Audiovoyant is when you can hear stuff. Usually, I think for a lot of clairvoyants, that's kind of like thrown in there, I guess, because they can be hearing things. But I think a lot of people are really sensitive to sound, whether it's, just distant banging, a car backfiring, birds chirping, whatever. Like, there's so many times I'm very, very, very audio sensitive, and there are times where I'm like out somewhere, like I'm on a hike or something, and there'll just be birds just like going off and going off and going off. I'm like, oh my God, shut up. So annoying. Another very, 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 very famous ghost rumored to visit her favorite old suite is Marilyn Monroe. I need to do a whole episode on Marilyn Monroe because she'd be haunting so many people. She is, she is unsettled. Marilyn, someone needs to do a horror movie where Marilyn Monroe is the main antagonist because she'd be fucking people up on the afterlife. I swear to God. All right, but get this one. This is so interesting to me. People don't particularly see her, but they smell the scent of her favorite perfume. And if you want to dive down a rabbit hole, go ahead and look up what that perfume is. Also, how do you know that's her perfume? I'm not, so if I'm good at hearing, I'm not good at smelling. Which, thank God, I live in a city and it's disgusting. I prefer not to be smelling things. No. But anyway, to apparently to perfumologists, they can detect the lingering scent of her perfume. I got one more haunting. Then I have a personal experience. And then just because this podcast is, yes, meant for all the horror girls and gays, I have a queer history lesson about the chateau. A spirit in the main building likes to pull bed sheets off of the sleeping guests' beds and open locked windows, and they call it the peekaboo ghost. Okay, look, the chateau has some freaks. All right, you've got the ceiling ghost looking down on your bed. You've got the peekaboo ghost pulling off your covers. There's some pervs. There's some pervs in there. And that leads me to my experience at the chateau. So the statute of limitations has definitely passed on these experiences because you're not supposed to be doing this kind of stuff there. But I used to be part of a group, and if you're a gay man, you live in a major metropolitan area, you may have experienced these private party groups. It's the kind of group that you have to fill out an application to join. Usually you send a picture as well. They just want to get to know who you are and like what vibe you're bringing to the party, right? And before you go one way and you're thinking, no, I will not and am not ever been part of an exclusatory group. That meaning all body types, all ethnicities, all short, tall, everything in the middle, all that stuff. So it's not exclusive to any one thing. It's just a private club. And you send in a picture. And if the person running the party is an ex of yours, you don't get in. But everything about this private club, except for the application, obviously, everything is as anonymous as you want it to be because all of these parties were underwear masquerade parties. Oh, we're getting slutty now. We're getting slutty now. Let me have another see it. Let me have another. Rosé. Perfect, perfect summertime wine. Good rosé. Okay, so maybe you're curious about the underwear masquerade parties. You're not supposed to do this at a lot of hotels, and not just the Chateau, but you're not really supposed to like throw a party in your hotel room, let alone like a sexy underwear party with a whole group of people who are not paying to stay there. So, so you walk in and right away that's where like your clothes check is, and if you've ever been to one of these kind of events, it's usually like there's some kind of table and you put your shit in the bag and then you try to hide your bag somewhere where you can find it later and whatever. You don't bring your valuables. Okay. Don't bring your wallet, don't bring your phone. Right. Lock it down. I also bring my own bag. The way there's just no confusion. There's no way somebody could have grabbed my stuff by accident because I brought the green gym bag, the lime green gym bag. Now you know if I'm at a party. You'll see my lime green gym bag. So you could bring your own mask, or there were masquerade masks provided. And the I specifically one time did not bring my own mask. Of course, I'm gay, so I have Halloween. I was a cosplayer for many years, so I've got the party supplies. But a good, cute little masquerade mask, was provided if you didn't have one. And so there was one time specifically where I didn't bring one just so I could kind of have a souvenir from the party. And I still have it. It's literally like one of those like dollar stores Zorro masks, right? But whatever. So you're wearing your cute little underwear. You've got your you got your little mask on. I will give it to the gays for this experience because the lighting was on point. No overhead lighting. Red light everywhere. A few spots in the corners and at the bar area where there was some soft, low white light, so you could actually see what you were doing. And so you just walk around and see all these gorgeous men, like I said, I'm just into men. Okay, so to me, gorgeous from one person to the next is going to be one particular thing or another. What makes one person gorgeous is not the same thing that makes another person gorgeous. So you're walking around this room bathed in this sexy red light, and everyone's in their undies and they've got their masquerade masks on. And so you could be a whole new character. You could make up a name for yourself if you wanted to. I'm not saying I ever did that, but not to comment farm. But what's your fake name when you go out? What I'll tell you one of mine. I'll tell you one of mine. One of my fake names when I go out and I kind of just want to be anonymous, so I don't want to like, I don't know, whatever, interact with people. Adam, because he was the first. It's very biblical. Right. It's very easy to remember. That's like can't possibly. I'm not gonna make up like a Zechariah or a Jefferson or whatever because I'll be forgetting halfway through the night. So just stick with something simple. But again, if you have a fake going out name, I'd love to hear what it is. And yes, did other things happen at the party? Of course, of course, of course. Did I see any ghosts? I was filled with another kind of Holy Spirit that night, so I can't say that my personal experience at the Chateau Marmont led to any particular ghost sightings. But I will say, and perhaps going back to that psychological response that I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, certainly by entering the property, there is a tone, a physical tone, a threshold that you're crossing. There is a history there. It is, like I said, it was built in the early, I think it was like 1920 something. So there is all this history there. So you know there's a lot of stuff that's gone on before. And I think that does, again, that adds to the lore, that adds to the experience. And that certainly added to my experience there because it wasn't just like, oh, some random, Hotel 6, right? It was the Chateau where this party was. And it was just that made it just that much more decadent and spicy and fun. So ghosts. I'll have to go back. I'll have to go back. They don't have those parties there anymore. They probably got busted. But uh and or it was the pandemic. God, the pandemic ruined everything. God. But I'll have to go back. Maybe it's worth it to get a room for a night just to see if I can do some ghost hunting. It's something I have thought about expanding the podcast with is maybe doing some lives where I'm at a location and we're just gonna check out the spookiness. We'll see. I don't know. I'm kind of lazy, so I doubt it. We'll see. We'll see. We'll figure it out together. Now, okay, as promised, from my ghouls, gays, and girlies, a little queer history. Now, this does go way back. If you don't know who Tad Hunter is, pause, Google it, come back to me. But Tad Hunter was a very, very, very famous actor who certainly at the time could not be an out performer, and people in general were not out, let alone to be out in Hollywood. Well, he had a long-term relationship with another very famous actor whose name was Anthony Perkins. If you don't know who that is, pause, go, come back to me. Oh, great, we're back. Anthony Perkins may be a little more well-known still because he was the star of Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. And I believe he was in the sequel as well. Was he in two or three of those? I don't know. I don't remember. But he might have more of a lasting legacy and certainly with, this crowd, with our crowd, because of the fact that he was in Psycho. Anthony Perkins, of course, himself dated women, was never out as a gay man and had a lot of problems and a lot of issues. Well, they were together for I think on and off for like 4 years. They had a very tumultuous relationship. Again, if you want to dive down these rabbit holes, I really, really encourage you just to look at. I think there's a documentary about Anthony Perkins, so you don't have to read anything. Well, guess where they met? At the Chateau Marmont. This was while they were filming Friendly Persuasion in 1956. Apparently, the only reason that these two Hollywood heartthrobs of the late 50s, early 60s broke up is because of the demands of the studio system. So they weren't truly hiding it that well, right? Publicly, of course. The general public knew them to be ladies' men, I'm sure. Uh-huh. But in their private lives, they were comfortable being, well, not, I shouldn't say comfortable. That's not true. Again, watch the documentary. It was really fucked up. Stuff back then was insane. But people behind the scenes most certainly knew. Their handlers knew, the studio execs knew, whatever, right? Their agents knew, like people knew. And it was sort of acceptable for that to be goings on in the background. But if it became too serious, anything more than kind of a fling, that was a no. And the studio had to put an end to that, which is so tragic and sad. I think part of the reason that I'm so drawn to ghost stories, historical hauntings, urban legends, all this stuff, horror culture is sure. Are there some the messages of survival and empowerment in horror? Yes, absolutely. But I think for me, what a lot of these stories give us are heartbreaking tales. And whether or not you actually believe in ghosts, the stories themselves are truly haunting. That's it for this episode. Before I go, have you checked all the locks? You better make sure all the windows are closed. Until next time, goodbye.